Suddenly they cut off my notices of my event, and after 2 weeks I was phoned by somebody who works there who said, your events can't be listed in the Now because you discussed 9/11. And the Now doesn't like that, and the Now has never done anything on 9/11. That's a good question. And they don't like you doing it. So, and of course the person who heads up the Now, I forget her name, but she was elected by a very small panel. What's her name, Victor? We went to that Journalists for Free Expression.
Yeah, Alice Klein.
Klein at the Now. She was elected as the president of that group, and I was banned from the Now. So, but of course they don't mind that they have 40 pages of close-up pornography. It's so close-up that anyone who's really interested in it, after looking at those pages, they don't really need to call anybody. So that's how the Now makes its money, not on people like me. So that's what I was told. They don't want anyone discussing it. So let's just say I'm the best kept secret in Toronto.
Where's the freedom of speech though? Freedom of thought, freedom of
Good
speech.
question. Where is it?
Supposed to be a democratic country here, so.
Oh, please.
We're not just thinking, talking.
No.
Please tell me.
No. That's why the US is a republic. Democracies can be swayed anyway with the media, and it just becomes mob rule. So that's why the US is a republic. You have to put limits on mob rule. But it suits some people very well. If you've got some time to spare, please, there's 2 courses everybody should take. One is Physics 101, the other one is Logic 101. Please, and then you won't be fooled. A lot of people won't be fooled that easily if they know their physics, which is what I'm talking about tonight, 9/11. Their story goes against every law of physics. So of course they must think people are so stupid that they, will buy anything that comes out of Hollywood. Anyhow, these are the papers for tonight. Please collect them, and if you want extra ones, updated, they're right here. Who had the opportunity, who had the motive, who had the power to do what happened. I am so tired. We've had 14 years of forensics. I mean, this is not normal. If you take it to the police, somebody's dead. Okay, he's been stabbed, hanged, beaten, whatever. 3 or 4 methods used to kill him, but he's still deader than dead. They don't waste 14 years arguing about forensics, how they did it, all these questions about how. I'm sick to death of it. It's all over the net. Everybody knows. Nobody's allowed to say a word. So that's what these papers are about. I am a journalist, investigative. And of course, if you look at the back of your schedules, if you have any left, my CV is on there. So no, because I've had people on the net say various lies about me. Oh, she's not with the school, she has to pay for the room, her CV is all lies, blah, blah, blah. And they do that because they don't, these are other people, the same group, that don't want anyone to come to this class. So that's why I'm explaining it. I'm part of the university. I'm a senior alumnus, and I'm part of a group called the Alumni for a Free University in 2 ways: free thinking and free that they don't pay for a course. However, the second last person gave it up last year. I'm the last one, and I've done this for 16 years. This is my 16th year, and the school does back me up. But in that length of time, I've had several people come, actually try and bodily take me off the podium. So, oh, you want one of those? Okay. No, you can look at these DVDs while you're up here. They're all different titles. That's all I can spare at the moment. So this class is why I no longer can advertise in the Now. So, questions. What was the motive? What was the motive for 9/11? So we all know what it was. It was to do 7 illegal invasions. Please don't dignify them with the name of war. War has to have 2 armies. These are illegal invasions called war, okay? And that's what it was about. These were planned before 9/11. And the illegal invasions were basically to destroy every country that had its own national bank. Get it? Every country that had their own national bank. I told you last week about Libya. If only America could have done what Libya did. What a wonderful place. The people got the proceeds from their resources, which is a normal economy. Douglas, does anyone here know who Douglas was? Major Douglas. Okay, it was called social credit, having nothing to do with socialism. It meant, it's like now we socialize the debt. That means you give it to the people. It's just a fancy way of saying we give the debt to the people. Everybody in these countries had credit given to them. The same in Iraq. All these countries, and of course, as I said before, these countries do not like usury, which is the same thing. When you have private people printing your money and putting interest on new money before it's done anything, this is called usury. Muslims don't have it. They don't have usury, but they've got all the oil. Double motives. And the bank, of course, is running it. So Goldman Sachs is now the front man for the Rothschild banks because things are getting a bit tight for them. So they need a front man now. It's really one and the same. What they do is they bankrupt people, they bankrupt states, they bankrupted Minnesota a long time ago. So that's what they do, okay? And at the peak of it, they're still planning to go into Iran. They wanted to go into Iran at the beginning. Way back when, as soon as they did Iraq, the Sharon, I think he's now somewhere vegetating. Not that it makes any difference to his brain. Anyway, he said, now we have to go for Iran. Right now, we got Iraq, we want to go for Iran. Because, there's the other motive, because Iran, you can have a direct pipeline right to Haifa. Iran is the ideal place to have a pipeline. So they've got to get in there, and they're going to do something so that they will get in, okay? And I am talking about the Zionist components of the US government. Of course, the tail is wagging the dog. And if anyone knows about Rebecca Roth, how many here have read Rebecca Roth's first book? Whoa. Listen, please, I recommend this highly. How many people have bought books at the Conspiracy Store, which is now moved to Bloor? It's near Lansdowne?
Yeah.
Okay, they're carrying both these books. The first one is Methodical Illusion, okay? And this is Rebecca Roth. I'll spell her name here. Go on the net because she's being interviewed. Second one is called Methodical, what is it? What's the word?
Deception.
Right, deception. I was thinking of Ostrovsky because his books have that in the title. Please, I beg of you, if you want to treat yourself for Christmas, get both these books.
What's her name again?
Her name, oh, I'll spell it. That's Rebecca Roth. She lives, I think, on Long Island, somewhere near New York. And those books are simply amazing because she's involved in the airline industry, and she got documents because pilots died and flight attendants died, and I'll tell you how they died at the end. She was so upset that she started doing research on this, and every pilot in every airline, doesn't matter where they were, at the top or the bottom, send her documents that nobody else would be able to get their hands on. So the second book is just as good, and I think people are out there saying a few prayers for her because she's placed herself in a very difficult position. But the thing is, what she's saying in these books is absolutely proven, okay? That's what she's saying. Please, if you do nothing else this Christmas, treat yourself to these books. I think they're just under $20. They're not huge books, they're not tomes, but the facts are important. So I'm recommending that, and I told Patrick I was recommending it to the class tonight, okay? Now, on top of everything else, of course, when they went into Iraq, they got to try every weapon they had. Horrible things, bioweapons, insects, you name it, they got to try it all. So they not only get to have the wars, grab the resources, take over the banks, Rothschild comes in, the IMF comes in, they're in Iraq now. So now countries that had no debt, the people were treated democratically. These were more democratic than the US. You get sick in the US, you have to mortgage your home. Are you kidding? You're not going to escape. It doesn't matter how much money you've made. If you get sick there, too bad for you. So who's going to call that a democracy? So I'd rather have a benevolent dictator, okay, than the sort of democracy they have in the US, okay? It's not. And because the media can influence everybody, the media is owned by the same people that made all these wars. When I saw that, my son called me downstairs the day it happened, 9/11. You got to see this. I went down, I sat down, I said, this is a movie. This is Hollywood. I said, who? What? There's somebody down there with their little cell phone taking pictures of what's going on. I said, this is planned. This is a movie. And this movie is a propaganda movie using real victims, and they will play this every time people get sick of war. They'll play it and play it and play it. Propaganda movie, planned well in advance using real people. So what's the background to this then? Might as well go into that now. It was planned years and years. And these countries that were due to be destroyed, this was all planned before well before 9/11, okay? So, how do we know this? Well, I just love this. This Lawrence Wright did a movie, but about planes, coming into the but it wasn't like the movie that a lot of other people discovered, okay? The 93 bombing, of course, 93, that bombing, the CIA had to admit, yeah, we did that. They had got this poor little patsy, I forget his name now, told him it was a phony bomb. He was a patsy, supposed to take the bomb in, and he put a little wire on himself. He wasn't that stupid. And then he went to them and he said, I don't think this is a phony bomb. I think this is real. I'm not going to do this. And he had it on tape. He had it on tape, what they told him. And he said, I'm not doing it. So they had to admit, it was in all the papers in New York, headlines, FBI, CIA involved in 93 bombing. So they had to admit it. So, and aside from that, in 96, and here's something else you want to get before they catch on and they don't have any left. I've got an old movie tape, it's a tape, and it was made in 96, this film, and it was called The Long Kiss Goodnight. And it had a good cast, and the Golden Boy script writer in Hollywood, his name was Shane Black. He had done all the Lethal Weapons. He had done Bruce Willis things. He was the top guy, and they offered him, he got $4 million for his script, the highest ever paid for a script. So then The Long Kiss Goodnight came out. Oh, it was blacklisted. They didn't distribute it. They got such horrible reviews to stop people from going to see it in '96. And he disappeared. I mean, not physically, but as far as career, right in the dumper. I still don't know if he's with us. I think he is, but he's doing very minor things. The Golden Boy, because there's a scene in The Long Kiss Goodnight, the actors that are playing the CIA, and I'm quoting you verbatim from this scene. When I played it for some friends, they made me play it back 4 times. That can't be true, it can't be true. I said, it is. It's in this damn movie. And so his career went down the toilet. And this is, the CIA people are standing there, and they're explaining to her, she plays one of them who has been in the business, and has lost her memory, some accident, and finally she remembers, but they want to blot her out because she thinks they're enemies. Their enemies have now become their friends, so they have to get rid of her. This happens all the time. Every year the enemies are new. Friends become enemies, friends get killed, betrayed. This is how it works, okay? So an enemy one year will be a friend the next year. So they're saying, yes, we did the bombing in '93. Now I'm saying this from the film. Yeah, we did the bombing in '93, but you know, the next time, we can't fake the deaths of 4,000. That'll have to be real. And of course, we'll blame the Arabs. So they're talking about the towers in this scene. First they admit they were in on the '93 bombing, and then they say what I just told you. That's out in a movie. You can send away on the net and get it on a DVD. I hope the scene is still in there, but it's in my original movie. So we know from that alone, that it was thought up and planned from '96 when the film came out. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. Okay, so that's why they blacklisted the movie. They didn't distribute the movie. Very few people saw it, but I was lucky enough to find the old tape. So yes, it was planned well ahead, and a few generals like Wesley Clark knew about it, that they had planned that. So we'll just go into the, we'll just do the demolition quickly. Yeah, the demolition, you can set up demolition in one day. So the very fact that Larry, what was supposed to happen at Building 7 didn't happen. So Larry's sitting there, they're all very worried, what the hell's going on? Finally, Larry says, so we said, call it. Well, how long does it take to set up a building for demolition? So within an hour or so, it comes down like that. And the really fun thing was that in the BBC, they said the building was down a half hour before it came down. Some stupid woman announcer sitting there, the building right behind her, saying the building is down. And there it was, right behind her. So they're not that smart. They're greedy, and they're not very smart. But they use Hollywood. Hollywood is where they set up all these ideas, okay? For instance, one of the biggest producers in Hollywood that did the movie JFK, his name is Arnon Milchan. Well, he's one of the biggest Israeli weapons dealers. Arnon Milchan, he produced JFK, okay? And he produced it so that nothing would be said about what was really going on. Can I rub this out now? What is this? Okay. So he made that film, and he was on doing that film to make sure that nothing came back and rebounded on the people who were planning all this. He thinks of himself as kind of a James Bond type. Hasn't got the looks, of course. But this is what he thinks, okay? So that's just one example of how a lot of these things are thought up. And Hollywood is the ministry of propaganda. That's what they do. They have all kinds of films. First, the Mujahideen were good. They were nice people. And they did a movie called Three Kings, in which the Mujahideen were all good with, I forget his name now. Anyway, and then things changed. The Taliban, they got rid of the opium. And so they were bad then. The Taliban, bad guys, got rid of the opium, no more black ops money. So they became bad, and they got in there at that point. And they took all their money out of the American banks, about 600 billion or something. So, and then all the steel beams were sent away, and the demolition part, they were sent away by the 11 days after this happened, okay? They were all sent away by Rudy Giuliani, who they called the recycler, Rudy the recycler. Got rid of all the beams that would have had the evidence of what was taped or glued to the beams, okay? So they were sent away. So there were a lot of steel beams. Then Judy Wood comes along after being in a coma for 10 years. I don't know if she was even around or awake when 9/11 happened. She said it was a beam, some kind of Tesla beam came down. However, she said everything was powder. Well, it wasn't, because the beams were sent away. There was a lot of stuff that was not powder, okay? So they were all sent away. And you had all these people coming up with all these different theories, how it was done, and then they did that, and they did. Who cares? Okay? It's only how long you can talk about the methods of murder. All right? Doesn't matter. Maybe they did it with a beam, they did it with thermite, they did it with some nukes in the basement, because it registered up the Hudson as an atomic explosion. Up the Hudson there, the geologic. So however many ways, they were determined those people all had to be gone, and the buildings all had to be gone. So at this point, after 14 years, I don't give a damn how many ways they killed everybody, okay? More important, who did it? And of course, this has always been the goal, okay? That will be, they're right now destroying every country that could help Iran. When those countries are out of the way, Iran will still be the object. Yes, it will. And they'll figure out something. Oh, by the way, I heard this little news thing about Netanyahu's dog attacked. They were having, what is it called? That's Hanukkah. And the dog bit 2 people. And so the dog had to be taken away and impounded, whatever. And I thought to myself, I think that was undue influence by Netanyahu. Otherwise, the dog probably would have been all right, you know. Wouldn't have bit anybody, but he lives with Netanyahu, that I called Nutsanyahu. And of course, Larry Silverstein, he knew all about the asbestos, okay? And he didn't have anything happen to him. He was at the dermatologist, is what he said, and his daughter and I think his wife or whatever, they were somewhere else as well on that morning. And they told Larry when he took the lease on that building, and of course Larry calls Netanyahu every Sunday. They're close, very close. They're always talking to each other. So Larry leased it, and they did say to him, you know what? You're going to have to take out the asbestos, and it's going to cost about $9 billion to take it out floor by floor so that it's not going to hurt anybody. You have to do it so that it doesn't end up in people's lungs. So it's going to cost you about $9 billion to do that. There were many, many reasons for doing 9/11. So Larry Larry, of course, never had to do this because it's now in all the lungs of the New Yorkers, and half the southern part of Manhattan Island, everybody, kids, they're all going to have very short lives. And some people in their 30s can't even climb a flight of stairs. And they were told by Christine, I forget her last name, she used to be governor of New Jersey. Then she became head of the EPA, okay? And she told them when this happened, oh, you can go back home. All the dust was everywhere. Toxic. She said you can go back home, clean it all up with wash rags. Just clean it up. So the kids and the people all went back home and they cleaned it all up. No environmental people came in. Of course, she was fired after and given a lot of money when she was fired. So everybody went back home, and those are the people that are now going to have very short lives. They went back home. Why? Because, okay, what day was it? It was, I think it was the 17th of September. Wall Street demanded that they be allowed to open up on that day, okay? The 17th, and that's why everyone was told, you can't have environmental people cleaning this up. You're going to go home, clean it up yourselves. Well, if you saw some of these places in New York, there were pounds of it. The windows were broken. It was everywhere. And they were told to go home and clean it up themselves. This toxic powder, and if you moved it, of course it entered your lungs. It was weightless, so you couldn't move it around like it was dirt. It was weightless, so people doing this, it went straight to their lungs. But Larry he invested, what, 124 million, a little down payment, and he made 5.6 billion, never gave a penny to anybody. Best friends with Netanyahu. Got to connect the dots, people.
I'd just like to say that Netanyahu's real name is Milikowski and he's from Poland.
Oh yeah, no, Netanyahu is Polish. His name is Milikowski. I don't know where he got the name Netanyahu. Who knows? I just call him Netanyahu because I think he is. He's always looking for war, okay? So they did the thermite, and of course, Building 7 had to be pulled. And now this is what another thing people don't know. Building 7 has no basement. Building 7 is built over a big hydro plant, no basement. Here we get to the best part here. So, what happened? Buildings 5 and 6. The 6 was only about 8 stories. It was called, I think, something to do with the post office, a government building, only 8 stories. The night before, FEMA arrived. Yes, they did, on the 10th. Now, 7 had no basement, no vaults, nothing. 6 did have a vault, and it contained gold, all kinds of papers, bonds concerning money, gold, what have you, and all the so-called secrets that they lost. When 7 came down, oh, the SEC, we have nothing now. We have no files. So everything was stored down in Building 6, okay? The guy who found this out is hiding out in South America. They tried to extradite him. He was a FEMA photographer. He went into the empty vault, knew it was empty the night before. So FEMA came in, took everything out of the vault that they said is missing the night before. There's huge tunnels down there. I mean, I worked in New York for years. There's huge tunnels to go into those vaults. Tunnels big enough for trucks, all right? Under there. So the trucks came in, they took out everything in the vault, 5 and 6 in the vault. Took it, it's gone. They've got all their papers. And then they set the bombs to go off in 5 and 6 the next morning. So they got the few people that worked in there out. And while the second image of a plane, some people say holograph because planes could not have gone into the buildings like that. Forget it. That was Hollywood. Hollywood had planes, okay? So when the second plane, supposedly people saw it strike the building, the bomb in 6 went off. When people were looking up at the second supposed plane, the bomb in 6 went off. And it's a different color, it's down below, you can pick it out. You look at the photographs. And so they had the money out of the vault the night before, but they don't have anything missing. And at the beginning, and you've got those papers out there, the SEC told everybody this, okay? Securities Commission. They said all the put options, the numbers of put options that came through the day before, all came from Israel. Every one of them, okay? All the put options. There's another motive, right? It all gets back to the motives for doing it. A lot of people made millions on the put options saying those two airlines, the stocks would go down, they would go under. That's a put option as a bet that something will go down. So the put options all came in from Israel. The next day the SEC said, first they said, we do know the names, and we're going to give out the names. A couple of weeks later, oh, that was lost. Sorry, can't give out the names. But in the beginning, they did go that far, and they did say that. So the SEC had their own little reason for not giving out the actual names, okay? So the vaults were robbed, and 5 and 6, and the bombs went upwards for 5 and 6, okay? They said, oh, building 5, there's a big hole in it because debris fell from, hey, well then where's the debris? There's a hole, there's nothing in it. No, it's not debris. The bombs went upwards after they took what was in the vault, okay? So, and of course, now I'm getting to what Rebecca talked about. There were no planes going into the buildings, okay? None. In fact, you can go to that lake in Scotland and you can watch Nessie the monster. You can watch it come right up out of the lake. It's a hologram, okay? And that's what they do in movies. That's why Hollywood really is a big factor in this. So, what actually happened to those planes that got nowhere near the buildings? And of course, one of the pictures is just hilarious. It shows a plane going into the building and coming out the other side, the nose of it, coming out the other side intact. They're not that smart, okay? And no, there were no planes. So what happened to the planes? Okay, this is what Rebecca found out. And she took 3 years to go through the documents, the timelines. She knew what can happen to planes and what can't. And she had all kinds of pilots, because some were died in those supposed 4 planes, and lots of flight attendants that she knew. And so she did all the timelines, and this is actually, and they have not disproven it. In fact, they've agreed, because her timeline stated there was an air base. This is what happened. Well, they were all off the radar, and you have to know this. This guy, I think it's Rabbi Dov Zakheim, okay, he, of course, owns the drones. He did the drones and whatever. He's the guy they were looking for when 2.3 trillion went missing at the Pentagon. We'll get to that later. And he had devised something called a termination system, termination, which was put in a few of those planes. And what it does is, it's supposed to be for hijacking, and this was good old Dove again. And most pilots didn't want it because they said once that system is in, we can't contact the controllers. We are isolated. We have no power. We can do nothing. So they were in those planes. Those planes, in 20 minutes, were at a base called Westover, where there were 2 hangars, large hangars, okay? And when they got to Westover, the 4 planes, 2 in each hangar, when they got in the hangars, the handlers on the planes told, and there were not large amounts of people on the planes, together about 285 people on 4 planes, and they told them they were helping the government. They gave them the scripts to make the phone calls. Now here's where we get to physics. Even she did, because she knew it for years. The cell phones at a certain altitude do not work, okay? They do not work. So she knew, as soon as she listened to those phone calls, she said, these were made on the ground. They were not made in the air, they were made on the ground, and that's a fact. So proceeding from the fact, the physics fact, that they were not made in the air, but had to be made on the ground, she took the timeline and went from where they started out, and each time with the 4 planes, she ended up at Westover, this base, with the 2 hangars. So the people were told they were helping the government, they were given scripts to make phone calls, and they made them. And she said some of them were so silly. Supposed to be flight attendants making a call. They didn't do the hijack code. They wasted some 20 minutes supposedly talking to relatives, mothers. She said a flight attendant would never do that. They know what to do when something like that happens. They have a code, and they can phone it in. She said, so as soon as I knew that, she said, then I never gave up until I found out exactly what happened. And that's what happened. And after they did all the phone calls, there was no plane shot down over it. There was no let's roll garbage. That was Hollywood again. My God, come on. Hollywood tells people who to hate. That's all they do, okay? That's all they have done. It's propaganda since World War II, and they do it all, okay? So there they were. They finished their calls. What then happened? They told the people. They didn't take them all out to do calls. They picked a few, and the handlers were there, tell them. But they knew nothing about airplane conduct. That's where she had the advantage. So she said those calls were stupid. They weren't. Whoever wrote that script didn't know anything about flight attendants or whatever, nothing. So what happened to them after that? 285 people. They asked them to get back in one of the planes. And of course, there was one of those doors that comes down on a plane, and they were gassed to death. She thinks it was cyanide gas, but it didn't take very long. They all died of gas after they had performed their phone calls. So her second book is about the handlers, where they came from, because they had a list, the seat names. One guy in 9B had a big part to play and giving the scripts out for these people. And they said he had died when the hijackers attacked him. And they knew who he was. Actually, he was an assassin who could kill somebody with his phone card. But apparently these little 5x7 Arabs got him. He died. So it's all garbage, crap, lies, and more lies are coming out. So that's in the first book. The second book is about the handlers and who they were, okay? So, and let me see. Oh yeah, I should have put this on the board. So, here's what we have in Washington. And she mentions this at the end of the first book. This is the problem, okay? In 1977, the law was changed. Now, I haven't got who pushed it through Congress or who the people were, but in 1977, they said in America that people with dual citizenships to other countries could be elected and work in government, okay? And Rebecca talks about this in her book. And I go along with her. I don't care if an ordinary citizen has a dual citizenship, but in government, making decisions, foreign policy, every one of the people making the foreign policy for Washington has a dual citizenship in Israel. Is this not a problem? Governing the country. So this is the biggest problem now. Everybody knows about it. Nobody knows how they're going to change it. And you've got that idiot Trump who's in favor of all of this. He's in there now. It's so ridiculous, I can't even talk about it. A corporate guy, and of course, if he's that important, I think he could get a better hairdresser instead of the sweep over with the orange dyed hair, don't you? I mean, if he's running for president. So the pathocracy is running the US government, and they keep saying 3,000 dead. No, it was over 4,000 dead. It was exactly the figure. There's 1,000 missing. I'll tell you where they are. It's exactly as in the movie. We can't fake the deaths of 4,000. They keep saying 3. There's 1,000 missing, and you know where they are? Here's where they are, okay? The 1,200 who are still missing and unrecovered are buried in a 100-acre landfill on Staten Island, which is used for garbage. Have you got that? The landfill was named years ago as Fresh Kills Landfill.
Wow.
That's where the 1,200 missing are, because they're in bits and pieces. So they were put there like garbage, okay? And Fresh Kills Landfill was the name of it before this happened. Those are the missing people. Not to mention the firemen, who are, so many of them are dead for so long now. And and listen to these people who still think even the people in the building, the towers, didn't know. 6 months before 9/11, financial corporations at the WTC were ensuring the lives of their employees. 6 months before. I think it's called dead peasant insurance. Yeah, it's dead peasant insurance. I mean, there's so many clues, you know. So, but the ones they like are the Korans left everywhere. These guys go out to a bar the night before they're going to meet Allah, and they leave Korans around. That's the kind of clues they put out for people. The clues were so stupid and so obvious, you know? Going around dressed like Arabs, going to bars, doing all this stuff and bragging about they were pilots and all this crap. Okay, oh, here's the woman who sent everybody home so that they could get cancers, including the children. Christine Todd Whitman, former head, here we have it, former head of the Environmental Protection Agency. And by the way, Christine Todd Whitman, when Harris, do people remember Harris coming in with his common sense revolution? Harris, he was advised by Christine Todd Whitman. They had tete-a-tetes every night at the Bradgate Hotel for months before he got in, okay? That's who she is. She was governor of New Jersey. So she's a real, as crooked as a dog's hind leg. So she was dragged before a congressional committee to explain why she authorized a return to ground zero only days after September 11, despite it being a highly toxic waste site. Have you got that? Now here we have it. In the 6 years, now that's way back, 6 years since the attacks, this congressman said, we have accumulated a mountain of evidence that tens of thousands of those exposed are suffering from chronic respiratory disease and a variety of cancers. This is what Christine Todd Whitman did. The same people who ordered this and planned this and knew how many would die. These are the ones, excuse me, yes. Look on the net if you don't believe me. I have papers from people and reporters I knew in New York when I worked there. I don't need to go on the net to find it out. So this is what's happening, and the founders of the United States, they must be going at warp speed in their graves because of what their country has become. Okay? And of course, the tail, as I said, is wagging the dog. And many people knew it was going to happen. And, where was I here? So they insured their lives. And I have a list, I believe. Here we go. Just so you'll know. So, I'll tell you who is benefiting. Now, I don't think any Arabs benefited from any of this, do you? Isn't that the first question a cop asked himself? Who benefited from this murder? Who? That's the first person they look for. Apparently, we never got to that. We never got to asking who took all the benefits, okay? Certainly not the Arabs, we know that. They got a war, their whole country is covered in DU, women are afraid to have babies, they're all radically deformed like they were in Kosovo, and Iraq basically is uninhabitable. And soon, these will be other countries covered in DU, uninhabitable, because all that matters is pipelines and the oil gets through. And the really sick part of it is, we shouldn't even be using oil. Oil is killing us. It's killing us. And now they're going to use the oil, which they've been using, to back the phony Fed dollar. Okay? That's what they want the control of all the oil for, so that the phony Fed dollar doesn't collapse. Okay, these are the same people. I'm talking about Goldman Sachs. I'm talking about the Rothschild cabal, which has now taken over the globe. Okay, and Goldman Sachs is their front man. It's still about the money. The most important thing we could do is take back our creation of money. When money is created privately, everything is controlled by the people who print that money. Everything. The politics, the foreign policy, it's all controlled by the people who print the money privately and charge enormous amounts of interest. Doesn't like what I'm saying, I guess. Anyway, this is what's going on in the States now, and they lost their independence in 1913 when the Fed moved in overnight and took over the printing of their money. So that's what we have now. All the countries with honest banks, with their own banks, with people getting their share, are destroyed. Iran will be the last one they'll get to because they don't want anyone around to help Iran. That's too difficult. So first of all, they want everybody around Iran that would help Iran gone, destroyed. Then they'll go here. Because they would never go on the ground in Iran, 4 times as big, mountainous, 400,000 army, whatever, They're gonna get their asses handed to them if they go in on the ground, so it's gonna be nuke. Yes, it is. Like I said, that's what's gonna be happening after they get rid of every country that's gonna take Iran's part, okay? So, here are some of the people. Don't forget, war is the biggest business. War is the most profitable business on the globe. If it weren't profitable, it wouldn't be happening. War is about robbery. First it's lies, the propaganda. Then they go in, everything's stolen. It's lies, robbery, and massacres. That's what war is. It's the biggest business, got nothing to do with nothing altruistic. None of this crap they talk about to get these poor guys to go to war, and then they throw them out after. They just use them up and throw them out. No, if war weren't profitable, it wouldn't be happening. But because it's profitable, it doesn't matter. If we were a globe of beige agnostics, we'd still have war. It's not about even religion, it's about profit. And they use the people, the fundies, the fundamentalists in religion, they use them. They're being used. Well, they're not bright enough to think up this. Come on. It's all emotion. If you're a fundamentalist, as I said before, it means we've got funding and we're mental. That's what the definition of fundamentalist is, okay? So now what's happening is, these are the results, okay? Those who made the put options, never to be disclosed. All the defense contractors, oil executives, who also work in the White House. It's full of people from Carlisle. It's full of people, Bechtel, Halliburton. The Mossad now run Homeland Security. Yes, they do, and they came on TV shortly after 9/11 and they said, we're the best ones to run it because we know how to deal with terrorism. So, these documents, if you haven't got these documents, this official document from the UN, please come up and get it before you go. I managed to run it off for a toonie. All the corporations who stole the Iraqi public assets, including all the artifacts in their museum. And they knew which ones were copies and which ones were not. And all of the archaeologists went to Washington before this happened, and they begged them, they said, please guard the museum. This is the history of the world. Don't let anything happen. They begged. Well, of course, everything was taken out that they could get their hands on. And that's being sold on the black market right now by somebody named Eisenberg, okay? So all the antiquities were taken. And of course, now we have that Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was ready after the Oklahoma bombing, okay? The Oklahoma bombing, where it showed half the bombs didn't go off, a whole kindergarten of children killed, and they had the Patriot Act ready to go after that, but it didn't become the huge massacre that they had planned. But right after 9/11, within 45 days, Patriot Act came through. 45 days, that's all it took after 9/11, because it was ready to go. Okay, so that's the police state, which will smother all dissent, civil liberties, and it was ready back then. And so, and another person in Canada, it's a constitutional lawyer, I know him quite well, he's a member of the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform, and we're the group, I'm part of that group, and we're going to get back our Bank of Canada now. But when 9/11 happened, within a couple of years, with all the Arabs that were thrown into the West End detention with no charges, he was trying to help them get out because he's a constitutional lawyer. And he told us in a public forum, he said, my daughter's life was threatened. And at that point, his daughter was a teenager. He said, I got a phone call I know who called me, and I was told if I don't stop helping them, my daughter will be dead. Now that happened here, right in Toronto, and Rocco Galati told us all that. We're not reading bad novels here. This is what happens when you go against this group. Yes, okay? So they're going on, the Arab state in there, they're still being jailed, okay? Now, what's happening in all these countries as they destroy them and the people run in fear, they are taking every asset, the public assets, and they're just robbing them. Privatize means robbing, that's what it is. And it comes from the word privateer. Way back in Queen Elizabeth I, her time, a privateer was a ship, and if you saw the skull and crossbones, you got the hell out of there, because that meant the ship was a privateer. They were going to board your ship, take everything, and you were going to be drowned. That was a privateer. That's what privatize comes from. It means to rob somebody, to rob the public assets, and then they become private. And the first privatization was of our money. Please understand that. The first robbery was of our money. We don't get to print our money with no interest anymore. I can't raise this thing. Somebody come up here with muscles, okay, and put that up. So we don't get to print our own money. It's privately owned now. And when it is, they give us as much as they want to give us. If it isn't enough, too bad. So that's what privatize means. It means you're robbing public assets and you're taking them over, okay? Now, so that's the banking cartel. And of course, more people, the terror propaganda like the 9/11, and then they're saying, oh, we could have another bombing in this city and that city. This keeps people so frightened. They don't even put their heads up. They just hope that they're going to survive, okay? So the terror propaganda, preemptive war, that's what that is. That's all preemptive war. For no reason, you just go in, you invade, so don't call it a war. It's an illegal invasion. Preemptive illegal invasion, like a home invasion. These are country invasions. And the same thing happens as in a home invasion, only to a country, okay? So the preemptive invasions are being going unnoticed and called wars, okay? And of course, the Federal Reserve will be okay. It won't collapse quite yet because now it's got all the stuff they robbed. The Fed, it's got all the resources that they robbed. So it won't collapse yet, okay? Not yet, because it's had more robbery to back their phony money, okay? And all the new weapons are tested on these people in these countries. Not just Iraq, Libya. All the new weapons are tested, whether it's bio, whatever, mind control, it's tested. It was tested in Iraq. Even things like flies that carry skin diseases were tested in Iraq. Horrible things were tested there. And mind control was tested there, yes, okay? So everybody makes money on the victim, okay? And the Fed will keep on going. The weapons are all tested. And of course, Obama became head of the Security Council. That is so. How can this be? The president isn't supposed to be head of the Security Council at the UN. This has not happened before, but it's happened now, okay? And of course the propaganda still is. The propaganda won't stop. Iran's gonna have a bomb, Iran's gonna have a bomb. This has been going on, I think, for the last 40 years. Iran will have a bomb. Whoa. Well, that is a worry for a country like Israel, which has 250 hydrogen bombs. What a worry for poor little Israel, okay? Iran might get a bomb. oh my God, we have to go in there and blow them up, do anything. They could get a bomb. Well, what about yours? Here. Who told us that? Dr. Helen Caldecott, who is the expert on what happens in nuclear wars. And they're worried about Iran, okay? Okay. See, that's what propaganda can do. There is no course called Studies in Propaganda at any university. I know one man in London, a professor, and he has that course. I haven't heard from him in about 5 years. And he said to me, you know, he came here and he had some films, and he said, you know, I thought that I was teaching studies in propaganda until I realized, and people asked me, why don't you talk about Palestine? He said, so now I talk about it. And he said, I'm getting a completely different attitude. He said, I had no idea before I started this what was going to happen to me if I talked about Palestine. Because that is out of the news. It is never discussed. But he said, I have to because of what's happening there. So, oh, did I skip this? Wait a minute. Okay. Oh, yes. So anyway, he said, so now I talk about it. So every time, as soon as they got into Syria, there's a huge refugee camp in Syria. I think it's been there maybe ever since the first massacre in Palestine. And so when ISIS, I told you who ISIS is, when they went in there, first they went to the refugee camp. That was the first stop, because they don't want any Palestinians coming back to claim anything. They don't want any of them returning. And when they go into these countries, they start with those refugee camps first, okay? That's what they start with. So, and then the Pentagon. Now the Pentagon, you've got a really good paper on that down there. And the Pentagon, I knew the woman that worked in the Pentagon. Let me just get her paper out here. Where have I put it? Oh, here it is. Her name's Barbara Honegger. She worked in that building, okay? Here we have another thing about, oh yeah, the plane bombed the Pentagon, blah, blah, blah. No. Here's what Barbara told me. And this is what happened. She came to a 9/11 inquiry, I think it was 2009. She came with Cynthia McKinney, and they wanted a paper that I had. So I went the first day, and then I thought, this is crummy. They're not even doing it properly. So I thought, well, I'm not even staying. And they said, come tomorrow because we want your paper. Now, at the Pentagon, it was another no plane bombed it. What they did was they flew a plane over at the same time as the bombs went off, so that people in the distance thought, oh yeah, the plane must have dropped the bombs. That's how they worked that. That was Hollywood again. The plane was seen in the distance, but actually it was heading north. They couldn't have bombed anything, but they had it timed so that the bombs went up at the same time as the plane went over. And Barbara works in that building, and also in that building, they were renovating. Now, so it's a Pentagon, it's got what, 8 sides or whatever the hell. So an area like this, there was a wedge driven into the building, and the walls were out. It came in shaped like this, and they were renovating. And when people went home at night or even in the day, of course, while they were renovating, the bombs were inserted all in here. No plane went into the Pentagon. There was no wings. There was nothing. Okay. And she said, I was there. She said a lot of us was there. It was all bombs. All of it was bombs. Okay. And she said, in my watch, my friend's watch stopped. The clock stopped, and she said they gave a different time. They gave the time 5 minutes after we knew the real time, and that it was not a plane, it was all bombs. And at the same time, all these men, these auditors, that we're looking to find where the 3.2 or the 2.3 trillion went, because Dov Zakheim was in charge of it. So they were going through all the investigation in there was one meeting room in here, bombed straight on. I think almost 100 were killed. All the people that were investigating the 2.3 trillion. All dead. All were told to meet at a certain time in that one room. Off they went. They all met in that one room. And this is what she says here. I gave her the financial report. Now this is what she said. She asked me to bring the report to her the following day. I came back on the 10th with both copies sealed and addressed to them. And she said, most of the people who were killed in the bomb blast were with the Office of Naval Intelligence and were investigating billions in bonds that were laundered, as well as the 2.3 that was missing, okay? And she said there are no planes involved. The bombs were placed throughout the area where the Office of Naval Intelligence was being renovated, okay? People who were survivors of that blast said that their clocks and computers stopped at 9:30. The official time, however, was 5 minutes later than when the Pentagon clocks actually stopped. This was apparently the time that a large plane flew over, but it was on a flight path to the north, which could not have gone near the Pentagon. Over a dozen eyewitnesses agreed in separate interviews that the plane was heading too far to the north to have hit the Pentagon and was the only plane in the area at that time. Okay? So that was Barbara. So now we get on to the really nice part of this.
Sydney, there was also a bit about one of the people working in the Pentagon kept coming into Cheney and saying the plane's getting closer.
No, he didn't want to do anything.
No, he didn't.
He knew it wasn't going to hit, the plane was not going to hit anything, no.
Exactly.
Cheney, no. That's not Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld is the one that got aspartame into all the food and the drinks. And he's also in with Cheney, though, on this. So here's this. I didn't have time to put it on the door tonight. And this is true. The lawyers rake in piles of cash. 9/11 responders get zero. It's horrible the way they treated the firemen and all those people, you know. So now I want to tell you what happened when I went to New York last September with a friend of mine in the class. And I went to the museum, the Memorial Museum on 9/11. And it took about, 3-4 hours anyway, to go through all the rooms and see what was going on. Well, I've got to tell you about the room where everyone was sitting down in the dark on benches. They didn't have any film to watch, but they were listening to the phone calls and they were weeping. These people were in a dark room listening to phone calls that supposedly were made from that flight to the families by the poor people with the hijackers. And they were weeping. And they were on little benches and listening to every one of the calls, about 40 people maybe in that room. They believed every word of it, and they were weeping about it. Let's roll, blah, blah, blah. The whole Hollywood, it was just horrible. Anyway, then I go to the next room, and in the next room, I see, well, there was something in a glass case, maybe about this high. You can look at it. And it was supposedly a part of the plane that was on the Pentagon lawn. It was like It was like a nose of a, certainly not a large plane, oh my God. It was like one of those little pieces you saw them carrying, the few guys on the lawn, and they're carrying some little nose of something no bigger than a lawnmower. Of course, they had to scatter them on the lawn, and the lawn itself, there wasn't a mark. The grass was like a golf course, perfect, nothing, and they scattered a few things. Has anyone here ever seen when a plane goes down? Have you ever seen the debris field of a plane? Acres, bodies, suitcases, you name it, it's there. It's all over on this White House lawn. I think there was 2 or 3. The grass was just like, you know, and what the plane was supposed to have done, this intricate, and pilots who were experts said, I couldn't do that. Whatever he was supposed to do in that flight path, it didn't happen because there was no damn plane. Anyway, so I'm walking through these rooms, and so I see a few pieces of the plane. And by the way, nothing about Building 7. In the whole museum, there's not one word, there's not one film, there's nothing. Building 7, it never happened. It's not in there. Nothing about it. I swear to you, I went through every room. Nothing about it. Then they have these students working in the cafeteria for nothing. They're all volunteers upstairs in the cafeteria. And I talked to a guy in a suit, looked very executive in the building. He was giving orders here and there. And I said, well, tell me, it's $25 to get in, basically. And I said, there's a lineup around the block every day. Where's the money going? To the victims' families? He said, oh, no. I said, well, what about the souvenir store? Horrible souvenirs, like I don't know why they're called souvenirs. No, that's not going to the victims' families either. And I said, wait a minute, so where is all this money going? You're collecting billions. You'll have billions. He said, well, it's going to an education program. And I said, an education program? He's quite proud to tell me. He said, oh, yes. He said, next year, we've already got it in New York State, we've got it in New Jersey, and it's going to go through the United States from kindergarten in the schools, from kindergarten to grade 12. This story is going to be taught to the students. It's history. Quite happily told me all this. I didn't have to force him. Okay? This is going to be the education. All the kids from kindergarten on up are going to be told our version. He didn't say our version. He said the history. The history that we have here, that's going to be taught in all the schools. And that's where all the money is going. And I said, well, how many people would it take to run this museum? I mean, everything's in it. It's all done. You don't have to do anything. You just walk through the rooms. The stuff is going to stay there. He said, well, there's about 64 people who are running the museum. And I said, 64 people? And after I'd spoken to him, I went upstairs and I saw the students who were doing stuff for nothing. And they said, one of them said, oh yeah, he said, we could run the place. About 4 people could run the place. It's all in here. We just have to collect the money, we could run it. And I said, well, who are all these? He's telling me all these directors and 64 people. And he kindly told me they're all making 6 figures in salary. Every one of them is making a 6-figure salary for doing essentially nothing, okay? There's nothing they have to do in the building. This is the money that they're getting. And they're getting it for like sitting on a board, okay? Now, so I've got this is a little information sheet, which I took down at the time. Now, here's the basics of what it is. So the same people who perpetrated this are getting free propaganda in the schools, and they're getting billions of dollars. Nothing's going to the victims' families. Nothing, not a dime. So I called it a desecration. So here's some figures here, okay? The current executives at Ground Zero all have salaries of 6 figures over $400,000 a year plus expenses. Now, Foundation President Joseph Daniels, 38, is paid $371,307 a year. 11 staffers each pocket $170,000 a year. 4 executives pocketed more than $320,000 a year. $1 billion for the museum marquee. Parking is exorbitant. The store, well, I just said this, the store of souvenirs is an insult. 64 people run the museum. When I had students say to me 5 could run it efficiently. The director is Alice Greenwald. There are 9 advisors. Kate Levin, Jane Rosenthal, Edward Leventhal, David Blight, Barbara Kirschenblatt. All over $400,000 a year, okay? So, and he also told me this, the Memorial Museum has partnered with New York City and the New Jersey Commission on Holocaust Education to develop 9/11 memorial lesson plans in the schools from kindergarten to grade 12. Education, and these are my words, will now be indoctrinating the Commission's version of the 9/11 massacre. And in the final room, the hijackers' photos are there on the wall. All the ones that are still alive, working elsewhere, 10 of them. And they put their pictures up on the wall in the last room. They don't care that these guys phoned in, I'm still alive. Their pictures are up there in the last room. They were there when I was there, okay? And it says right beside them, these pictures are here. Now I'm reading you what it says there. These pictures are here because, quote, there are conspiracy theories that Jews or the CIA did it, unquote. And this is said by Bernard Haykel, Haykel, professor of Near Eastern Studies at Princeton. So 10 people still alive, their pictures are up on the wall. It's as if this whole, it's like Hollywood again. Please, when you listen to the news, if it's the regular media, please think Hollywood before you believe any of it. It's Hollywood. And I was so upset. I thought, what a great thing I went on the last day. If I'd gone on the first day, it would have ruined my whole damn holiday. It would have ruined it. I would have wanted to go home right away. So, and of course, in this 9/11 thing, I made these notes. I made this, did this as soon as I came out of there. The first responders were not given respirators. Okay. The firemen were ordered into the towers as they fell. The EPA told the New York families they could clean. It's about killing as many people as possible. They did things that no humane person would ever do. Cleaning it up, your children in there. And Whitman was let go with a package. 453 firemen dead. They're the lucky ones. Billions were made on the put options from Israel. Silverstein made $5 billion. Solved his cost of $9 billion to clean up the asbestos, because it's now all in the lungs of dying Americans who live on Manhattan Island and are going to be living very short lives. So it wasn't just 4,000 people. We're talking more than 1 million here in the end. Yes, we are. And it was all done to promote these illegal invasions by the same people who want Iran. So, what are we going to do about this? People can't sit on the fence anymore. I'm saying that the people who have done the longest and most brutal occupation in modern history, 60 years. 60 years. And when those things happened in Syria, they did another big killing because it's covered up by something worse somewhere else. So what are we going to do about this? For one thing, you can't have dual citizenship people running any government. Why would a government be crazy or stupid enough to do that? Secondly, this is the only country on the planet that has gotten away with breaking every convention that's humane on the planet. They've gotten away with it. Okay, you all know in my class, you're talking to someone here, I told you. My mother-in-law was Jewish. I married into a Jewish family. She just died last week. She would say the same thing to you that I'm saying now. We have to make up our minds what we're going to do. We have to do something. Because if we don't, and I'm sorry to end it this way, if we don't, we are all going to be Palestinians. Yes. Okay, Iraq, Palestine, Palestine or Palestine, that's the question, okay? But Palestine 2, Libya, Palestine 3, Syria, Palestine 4. That's what it is. Same rules, same horrors, same inhumane treatment. These are not wars. Wars used to have some honor. These are illegal invasions for robbery and murder. So we have to think, what are we going to do? The UN isn't working. They haven't got enough guts to stuff in its ass. And I ought to know, I worked there.
Didn't they create the UN?
Pardon?
Didn't these clowns create the UN? I thought that's what...
The UN was given land by Rockefeller for the building. I started there in '56, and that's why I have these documents. Yes, it was set up so that Israel had a legitimate, it said, okay, Israel's okay, let's give Palestine, like I said last week. So it was set up in '48, I think around the same time, to give legitimacy to these people. Yes. And they've gotten away with breaking every law, every humane convention since the very beginning. No one else has gotten away with it except that small country, which you could do with AstroTurf. So you have to ask yourself why that is. Because of the original agreement. This is how bad it is on this planet. Rothschild. That's his playground, Israel. He bought it, he owns it because Britain owed him a debt. He said, instead of giving the Palestinians independence for helping you against the Turks, which the British promised, I want Palestine. Give it to me. So they gave the banker that they were in debt to Palestine. And they said, but if you go in, you can't do, you've got to leave the people who live there alone. Oh, that's a big hope, isn't it? No. So that document that you should get now is about what happened when this company, the money lender, okay, on the globe, the money lender is the curse on this planet. Has been since Caesar. The money lender, we will all be slaves. Everyone obeys the money lender because they're in debt. If a country goes in there to stop this horrible genocide, their loans will be called in. They will be bankrupt. So we are stupid on this planet. We have handed over our right to print our own money to a private person. The British did it. Then the Americans in 1913, and that's why this tiny country gets away with everything, because This is who owns it. This is who is the money lender to the planet. This is who wants all these banks destroyed. They don't want anyone seeing a country like Libya, where people share in everything. They're happy, they get homes. They get credit for what they're doing for the country. No. The debt money system, the money lender, cannot survive unless he makes you believe you are worth nothing. You're lucky to be alive. You're lucky you're not sitting on the curbstone. You're a big liability. That's bullshit. People are creative. People make things. They build things. Then there's the intellect and the labor. No, they want human beings to feel that they are worth nothing or they can't exist. So anyone who tries to stop this most hideous genocide, there's never any news about it. You have to look very hard to get any news about it. Don't you see that if this is what they're doing in Palestine, what is going to happen to the rest of us? Do something about Palestine, because if we don't, that's our future. I'm sorry.
Just started bombing again.
Who are they bombing now?
Palestinians.
Oh yeah, because it's covered up by Syria. Yeah. No, they're quite honest in their own way. They have a sick integrity. The whole Jehovah thing. They have said, I've handed it out in the class from the Talmud, that other human beings are not like us. We're superior. We can do anything to you that we want. And then there's the Samson option. Because people like Netanyahu, yeah, he would do it. He would do that. He's madder than his dog, okay? So I'm sorry. We have to think about this. What are we going to do? Because there's one open sore on this planet that doesn't say too much for humanity, that nobody in all these years has taken upon themselves to say, this is a humane planet. We're trying to evolve. You can't do this for 60 years. But they have, and they get away with it. Because everybody owes them money. Countries, governments, yeah.
Can you make the distinction between the Rothschild family and...
I can't hear you.
Can you make the distinction between the Rothschild family and the bankers and the Jewish people?
Well, all the big banks, the Rothschilds, they're all Zionists, and they're all proud to tell you that. I don't know about Jewish people. I'm telling you now. I only know Jewish people that fight Zionism. I only know Jewish people that put their asses on the line to get rid of this thing. So yes, if my mother-in-law if she sat around and consented to all this, no, she didn't. She was an activist, okay? So the difference is all the big banks, Rothschild, yes. That's why the letter from Balfour, excuse me, I'm explaining this. The letter from Balfour said to Rothschild, we're in favor of the Zionist plan. He openly, look at the letter yourself, okay? He said the Zionist plan will help you. You can have Palestine. Other Jews said, what the hell is going on? Like my mother-in-law, she says, and I'm going to quote my mother-in-law, about 5 feet high, she said, the Zionists are the worst thing that ever happened to us. That's what my mother-in-law said, from Kiev, okay? Red, Marxist, red, Jewish, whatever. The whole combo. But this is what she said about the Zionism. She said, it's not a religion, they don't have a religion. And Ilan Pape, who is in Israel, and is a professor and a philosopher, this is what he said. Now, I'm going to leave you with this quote, okay, of how ridiculous it is to let this go on and try and not think about it. He said, the Zionists, they don't believe in God. They're atheists. But he said, but they do believe God gave them Palestine. I'm quoting Ilan Pape with a sense of humor. And he was right. So this is called, I think the phrase is cognitive dissonance. What cognitive dissonance means is you can look, this is what, and Christ said this, and I'm not a Christian either, but Christ said this. He said, the people who notice, tell you, you've got a mote in your eye, this was his sarcasm, and they don't notice the beam in their own eye, that is cognitive dissonance. The people in Israel are the most brainwashed on the planet. From day one, you're superior, you can do anything. Please read the Talmud. Read it. My mother-in-law had it on the shelf. It's not one book, it's about 60. But just take a few samples. It is just unbelievable. So if you're Jewish, as my in-laws all are, look into it. Just read about it. Nobody has the right to take people for 60 years, shoot their children for fun, starve them, and they're quite proud of everything. And I saw the t-shirts they wore at one point showing a pregnant Arab woman with a target right on her belly. And it said under it, 2 for 1. How is that allowed to go on this planet? Somebody has to step forward. Anyway, that's what I have to say about the 9/11. There have been other false flags done by the same people and blamed on the Arabs, okay? We're discussing 9/11. And this, and I'm going to talk, say now what Eric Margolis said years ago, and Eric Margolis is a very honest reporter. He said, this is the open sore in the Middle East. He said, as long as this is being done to these people, there will be no peace there. But he also said, the Arabs did not do 9/11. So not only, and Arabs are all Semitic. Somebody said to me once, oh, you're anti-Semitic. I said, I don't know. I dated Prince Faisal and I married a Jew. How anti-Semitic can I be? No, it's not about that. It's about humanity and evolution. And this should be stopped. This has to be stopped. And if that's gotten away with, 9/11, has anyone been put in jail for 9/11? Has anyone gone to court for 9/11? No. So either the whole world is intimidated by the money lenders, and yes, they're all quite proud to tell everybody they're Zionists, they're superior, and they have every right to do what they're doing, whatever that is, okay? So on this planet, there's one horrible blot on our evolution, and that's Palestine.
I actually had my brother in teaching session say that when they're done what they're doing with those people overseas, and the evil empire comes back.
The what empire?
The evil army comes back. What do you think they're going to do?
What evil army? Which one?
The American, the Marines.
Oh, they don't need an evil army. These people are all controlled by fear and the fact that their countries could be bankrupted. That's what it's about. If every country said what Iceland said and Hungary said, they kicked out the IMF. Iceland had jailed a few bankers and said, we're not going to do that anymore. If every country just sent a letter to Rothschild, excuse me, we're going to start printing our own money, we don't want yours anymore, there'd be blood in the streets. Yes, there would. All these wars are about, will nations be allowed to have no usury and print their own money, or are we going to use the money lender? Because the money lender, if someone can issue money as much as he wants to give you or as little, and do depressions and all the rest of it, and they plan the wars, then we're just slaves. So like the Americans used to say, It's better to die on your feet than live on your knees, okay? So I'm sorry, we all have to make a choice. As I said, I know a lot of Jewish people who are not in favor, but there's not enough of them out there. And they are threatened. Yes, they live with threats. And a lot of them have to not give an address or whatever. So this is what 9/11 was about. So we've got the police state now, and we've got the Homeland Security, okay? And now we've got an idiot like, what's his name with the red oversweep? Saying, oh, we can't let any of these people in. That'll be the next thing, okay? So this is how it goes. As long as Hollywood is running things and people, education works with them, the lie, the propaganda, that's what it means. Propaganda is not information. Propaganda, okay, this is finally my last word here, okay? You can't have war and killing without propaganda. People don't wake up in the morning, especially men, and say, oh, I feel like killing somebody. It's my hormones, I have to kill. No, they have to be indoctrinated. They have to be given drugs. They have to have all kinds of mind control. And they have to have a lot of fear. And this enemy will kill you. It's like the old Jehovah said, oh, if you don't go and kill them, I will kill you. So get on out there. So it's that whole thing. All right, so you have to make up your mind. Are you going to die on your feet or live on your knees? But when it comes to having kids, you have to really think about it, you know? So, as I said, this is my last one of the term. And that's what you people have to think about. What are you going to do? You can join groups. You can go become an activist and be with the people that march for Palestine and all of that. And they're a mix. But I'm sorry, the whole Zionist thing is what my mother-in-law said. I'm going to repeat it. Lillian, she's dead. She died last week. I know you're up there somewhere. So I'm going to say this, what you told me when I had an infant at her place. I'm telling you this, okay? Zionism is the worst thing, not just to happen to Jews, but to all of us. Okay, that's it.